Yours is the two-shot. To find out when it's your turn, visit australia.gov.au.
Authorised by the Australian Government, Canberra.
I said we needed to teach again books like To Kill a Mockingbird, The Crucible, 12 Angry Men, books that teach children the dignity of defying the mob, the heroism, standing for what's right, for whoever, against whoever. Now let me show you why, the kind of mob violence, barbarism pushed by the left. The sort of violence that comes with tribalism, this terrible identity politics. Last week I showed you video shot by a woman who was shocked, as her own women there, by having a naked man claiming to be transgender, showing his penis at her and children in a Los Angeles spa.
Yeah, get your money back. Everything. You got a man with his penis talking about he's a woman. He ain't no woman. Yeah, give her money back. There's no such thing as transgender. He has a... Okay? He has a penis. His penis is hanging out.
It turned out other women had that same experience, a man with a penis claimed to be a woman, even sitting in a hot tub with their daughter. But California law says the spa can't kick him out. Now, let me show you what happened when some people tried to peacefully protest outside the spa. Antifa gangs, the people who set fire to so many cities in last year's race riots, attacked them, punched them, kicked them, with police taking almost no action. They attacked and chased an Asian couple too. Again, why were the police so scared to intervene? This mob also assaulted a photographer and even terrorised scared and helpless women. Here's how wicked a mob can be. The West is in decline. Look around, where are the leaders you look to turn this cultural drift around? Where are the books to teach children there is a better way? Hang on, coming up next is Alan Jones, once the king of radio, now a close colleague, right here.
This is Alan Jones. Well, thank you, Andrew, and thank you for your very kind remarks, and for last night as well. But you're absolutely right, aren't you? Who's going to turn all this around? Where are the leaders? Where is the literature that they're reading to encourage them to believe it's a good world? Good evening to you all. Stay with us, there's plenty on. And tell your friends if they missed the program, as some of you write to me and tell me that you do, you can catch up on Sky News, YouTube or Facebook. Sky News Australia. Or go to skynews.com.au/opinion/Alan Jones. You can also catch up on my Facebook page, Alan Jones Australia, and your emails keep telling me that government might listen to bureaucrats, but they don't listen to those who pay their bloated salaries. Now look, I've said this before about Daniel Andrews. Let me say this slowly about Gladys Berejiklian. And politicians better understand that those of us who give a voice to the voiceless are not going to fall into line just because you're Mr. Prime Minister or Miss Premier. Gladys Berejiklian has lost the right to govern and to be believed. The performance today was nothing short of a disgrace. Not just that more than 5 million Sydney-siders will remain in lockdown for yet another week, but it was gutless stuff. Leak it to the media first, of course, not to this news outlet, only to her sympathetic left-wing media mates. Take the heat off, you see. And then thanking everyone for calling Crime Stoppers and dobbing one another in. Listen to this.
Can I say to regional communities, thank you for alerting police and Crime Stoppers when people from Greater Sydney have been coming into your community. You have defended your communities and we're really grateful to you for that.
That's appalling stuff. But then listen to this further rubbish.
Every time you leave the house, please assume that you have the virus or a loved one around you has the virus.
Yeah, that's it. Continue to peddle the fear, eh? Your country and mine, Australia, has 474 cases as I speak to you tonight. 0.018% of the population. Hardly a pandemic. 99% are mild, but amidst all the alarmist announcements, we're never told that, are we? Today, Gladys Berejiklian pins her alarmism by saying the lockdown extension was necessary because, quote, the Delta strain is a game changer. Now, I've played over and over again the American authority, Professor Peter McCullough, American cardiologist and epidemiologist, the professor of medicine at the Texas A&M College of Medicine. He's an internationally recognised authority with over 1,000 publications and 500 citations in the National Library of Medicine. He's been an invited lecturer to the New York Academy of Sciences, the National Institutes of Health, and the US Food and Drug Administration, amongst others. Now, this will demonstrate Gladys Berejiklian is not telling the truth, and you can't get away with that. Here is Professor Peter McCullough on the Delta variant, and this is what he says, because the cognitively deficient Biden has pushed the Berejiklian line. Biden said the Delta variant is deadlier. Berejiklian says it is the game changer. Both are untruths. Here is McCullough saying simply and explicitly,
the Delta variant is more contagious, but it's far less deadly and it's far less worrisome. In fact, it's a much weaker virus than both the UK and the South African variant.
It's far less deadly. It's not a pleasant thing to say, but Gladys Berejiklian, when she talks about the Delta strain being the game changer and placing alarmism over truth, you're not telling the truth. It is contemptible behaviour. But it's working because people are frightened. In difficult times, people seek hope, not fear. Gladys Berejiklian gave us hope in May when she said that New South Wales had, quote, the systems in place to be able to weather whatever came our way so that we wouldn't ever go into lockdown again, unquote. Well, this latest announcement of another lockdown has not been discussed by Cabinet. I've spoken to angry Cabinet ministers in New South Wales who tell me they hear about this just as you and I do at 11 o'clock at the Scare Conference. James Griffin, the Manly MP, has written to his leader pleading not to extend the lockdown. Gareth Ward, the member for Kiama, has issued a statement, quote, there have been no cases of community transmission in either the Shellharbour or Wollongong local government areas, but decisions about public health orders are made. Not only should the reasons be explained, but evidence should be provided. He writes, decisions without reason is completely and totally unacceptable. He goes on, as no such evidence has been presented, and yet our region has 0 cases of community transmission in the Illawarra since the start of June lockdown, I'm opposed to extending the lockdown period for the Shellharbour and Wollongong local government areas, unquote. Well, he's 100% correct. He speaks for millions when he says, quote, it makes no sense to limit individual liberty, damage business, and cause hardship for families when there is no overriding and greater public health reason for doing so, unquote. And that view was communicated to Gladys Berejiklian yesterday in her new mode of arrogant operation. It was ignored. The Treasurer of New South Wales, Dominic Perrottet, Deputy Leader, vehemently opposes the lockdown extension. He is ignored. I repeat that as anyone who seeks to lead this way has no entitlement to lead and forfeits the right to be believed. Have a look at this picture today of the Sydney Opera House. Look at that. Why? Well, the builder has apparently tested positive, so the whole place is shut down and guarded by police. Now, given the mentality of the political vandals running New South Wales, perhaps they thought the Opera House might be infected. But no, continue to fear. Schools are going to be rated between 1 and 4 to identify the risk of students contracting coronavirus. This is shameful, filling children with fear. Where is the epidemiological evidence that children are at any greater risk than they would be from a bad flu? What's more, there's going to be a map of restrictions for, quote, life after the vaccine. Get the drift? More alarmism. The government won't be responsible for lockdowns. You will be, because you mugs out there haven't been vaccinated. What was the ultimate insult yesterday from Gladys Berejiklian? We don't have herd immunity. We have herd stupidity. That's you. If everyone got the virus and recovered from the virus, like Peter Dutton, Richard Wilkins, Boris Johnson, Donald Trump, and people who work for me, we'd have herd immunity. Vaccination means nothing. There are people fully vaccinated who in this lockdown have to stay at home. They're no different from the unvaccinated. The place is being run by big government, big media, and big pharmaceuticals, and now employees are in the firing line because employers are ramping up a campaign to, quote, encourage workers to get vaccinated, unquote. But big business is as dishonest as big government. What is this daily fascination with new cases, regardless of the age of the person or the health? How old are these people? Thousands and thousands of old people have major respiratory problems leading to death. Why won't the government tell us the age of these so-called cases and the state of their health? Or do they want to add to the atmosphere of fear and panic? Well, let's have a real statistic. In 2019, in 9 months between January and September, there were 705 influenza-associated deaths in Australia from over 300,000 cases of flu. 9 months, 705 deaths. In 18 months of coronavirus, we've had just over 30,000 cases, not 300,000, and only 910 deaths. Were there daily press conferences on the influenza outbreak in 2019? Were there lockdowns, mandatory masks, border closures, businesses ruined, egotistical, power-hungry premiers and a prime minister locking the country down and talking about how we wouldn't return to normal for years? Were there medical professors telling us that even after we reached 90% vaccination, masks and QR codes would be required to make us safe? Come on, Australia, this is not leadership. We are being corralled into a future that we don't want and can't afford. I haven't climbed on any bandwagon. I haven't been converted. I was a virtual lone voice at the outset, warning against the alarmism, the fear and the hysteria. And still, not one sheet of medical advice has ever been tabled to the public. As Louisa wrote to me, quote, I was born in a communist regime and I never saw this in such magnitude. Gus says of these leaders, who are not leaders, but placed. Tell me one business that would employ any of these so-called leaders to do what? What's their skill set? Frightening people. Gus says they're all throwing their weight around in 8 different directions with no plan or consistency. Our elderly parents and neighbours are scared stiff and think the world is ending. Isn't this dreadful? Brett says, Alan, our great country is run by gutless politicians feeding the flames of fear rather than fanning the flames of common sense. I mentioned last week that China has 100 plus new nuclear missile silos under construction. Did you ever see the movie Die Hard with a Vengeance? A Bruce Willis classic? German terrorists planting bombs all over New York. He had police chasing explosions and potential bomb threats everywhere, including a school, except near Wall Street, where it was his plan all along to rob the Federal Reserve. Perhaps China have exercised a similar plan here. The virus goes all over the world, while we chase our political tails, yielding to meaningless scare conferences every day, driving our economy into the ground. What do you think China are doing? One businessman wrote to me today, the cost of all this, he said, is dreadful. Quote, we're still paying people, but without any income coming in and no job keeper, we already had 800, this is a big business, 800 job vacancies, so we have to keep paying people or they won't come back. Someone needs to close these testing centres and revert to what I advocated from day one, personal responsibility. Stop hyperventilating over cases and think about the people right now who are hyperventilating over how they're going to pay their mortgage, their bills, their wages, their kids' school fees. China's got the whole world running around focused on a virus, and our attention is somewhere else. What did Donald Horne say in 1964 about Australia being a lucky country run by second-rate people who just share its luck? Well, he was wrong, wasn't he? Everyday people who we've elected to the highest offices prove that they're not even second-rate. And while we let them keep going, they'll continue on their power surge, and we'll pay. Step 1, suspend all political salaries until the lockdown ends. And for New South Wales people, let me repeat, while we have to suffer this idiocy, inaccuracy, dishonesty, unscientific pronouncements every day, Gladys Berejiklian forfeits the right to lead and to run the state. I won't be giving up. You can't afford to either. What do you think? Email me, alan@skynews.com.au, or the text line 0414 000 848. Now, very serious matters beyond the disgraceful handling of this coronavirus, but again, it is political leadership or lack of it. I've spoken of the crisis in Afghanistan and the fate of hundreds of Afghani citizens who stood shoulder to shoulder with our diggers, now being threatened, hunted and killed. Indeed, it is argued that dozens of civilian Afghan employees who helped us in war are already dead and hundreds more left for dead. The Taliban is ready to take brutal revenge on any allied supporter. The Taliban and its al-Qaeda allies are making rapid advances in Kabul fate that hundreds of locally employed Afghans who work with our diggers see their fate on the line. I've talked about this many times. Government is deaf. These Afghanis are targets for retribution and revenge by murderous Islamist terrorists because democratically minded Afghanis are regarded by the murderous Islamist terrorists as being guilty of helping the infidel enemy. The Australian government decided in May to close our Kabul embassy, which makes it very difficult for the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade to handle the applications from those who believe they're in danger. I believe we have a responsibility to help these people who have perfectly legitimate claims to Australian help. Instead, it appears these workers are being asked to join the asylum seeker queues alongside millions of other Afghans seeking to escape. One of these workers who assisted our diggers made special application and received a reply from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Quote, the Australian Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade has considered your application. Unfortunately, you are not eligible for certification under this visa policy, as you are not considered an employee of one of the Australian government agencies identified in the legislative instrument, unquote. Note the language. The person most probably wasn't an employee, but a subcontractor. It doesn't matter. He was working for us. And this rejection was sent to an applicant, 15 of whose colleagues had reportedly already been murdered. The rejection is a death warrant for people who worked on projects critical to our counter-insurgency campaign at the height of Australia's involvement. Are we leaving them to be slaughtered? Reports of a note from a Taliban commander to one such Australian loyalist declared that the Taliban, quote, was aware of the man's work for a long time with infidel enemies of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan as an interpreter and a slave. Await your death very soon. Those who helped us in Afghanistan deserve our help now. It doesn't matter whether the stupid and heartless letter from the Department of Foreign Affairs said you were not considered an employee because you was a subcontractor. The Taliban don't worry about such niceties. On the line from Kabul, I have Shafiq Rahimi, who has written to the Australian federal government, to all cabinet ministers, and he joins me. Shafiq, firstly, our thoughts are with you. Did you and 150 of your fellow Afghans work for security companies employed by our embassy?
Thanks, Mr. Kay. Good to chat with you. Yes, exactly. From 2010, 11th November, from 1st of November, we joined as per half Australian security company up to 2016, and that time we were entertaining and also guarding. And after 2016, we got another security company of Aegis and Galawar. Till 2021, 15, then we finished and they closed the embassy.
Just a couple of things. Can I just ask you, you provided, these are really yes-no things, you provided translating services to Australian diplomats so they could communicate with Afghan people. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That we were interpreting for diplomats and SCCs, that were Australian security officers, and also Nepalese, and we were interpreting between other Afghans who were working, who were constructors. We were interpreting for them even sometimes if it was not unofficial time, like after 4 p.m.
Okay, now let's keep this tight. So we want to help you. How serious is this? How threatening are the Taliban? And to what extent are the lives of you and your families at risk? Right. I thought this might happen. Those lines were bound to be tested today. Dr. Kay Danes has been involved in this. We've spoken to her many times before. I kept her on standby in the Brisbane studio. She joins us here. Kay, I'm sorry we've been chopped off there. These are just ordinary Afghan men and families who've taken pride in protecting the good people in our diplomatic missions. What should happen urgently?
Well, Unfortunately, there's no place for them to process a visa, Alan. As you know, the embassy in Kabul's been closed, so there's no opportunity there. You can tell by tonight the communications problem. It is a serious issue. And for the fact that these people are being moved every few months and weeks, in fact now, the window of opportunity to get these people out of Afghanistan and into safety is rapidly closing. The Australian government really needs to act quite quickly and evacuate them immediately.
But this is our moral duty. I mean, I've spoken to you before, you've got a PhD, you couldn't even fill in the visa, and these people are still being asked to fill out visas. Haven't people like Shafiq, haven't they already been certified by Defence as legal interpreters or mission essential personnel? Okay, why can't they be loaded on a government plane now and taken to Dubai tomorrow, where Australia has those facilities 18 miles out of Dubai? Now, Bob Hawke after Tiananmen Square said simply, hang on, we're going to look after these people. Bang, it's happening. These Afghan people are part of our military family. Why don't we take them to Dubai, where we've got an air base? Al Minhad Air Base caters for thousands of people, medical facilities, accommodation. Why can't we fly these people out of Afghanistan immediately?
Well, Alan, as you would know with your discussions with a colleague of ours, Catherine McGregor, Glenn Kolovitz, we've been working diligently behind the scenes, talking with Shafiq and the other Afghan mission essential personnel, and we put it to the Australian government that we have the capacity to manage this evacuation with expediency, lawfully. Security vetting is already in place. The certification of these Afghans is already in place. All we need is that plane. We get them on board and we get them the heck out of there and their families before they're brought to harm.
Absolutely. Before they're slaughtered, about 150 of them, and they've been part of our family over there. It's our time to look after them. Kay, we have been talking. We'll keep in touch. I'm talking to people behind the scenes. I know you are. But this is urgent now. I mean, it's 5 minutes to midnight. So look, Kay, thank you. I'm sorry we couldn't have caught up to Shafiq because I wanted you to have a word with him. But I know you'll be talking to him, and I'll drop him a note as well. But thank you so much for your time, and to Shafiq and all those people who will be getting copies of what we're saying here tonight. We are working with you, but for God's sake, Scott Morrison, we'll just forget about coronavirus and press conferences and that rotten Brereton report and safeguarding, the Blazer Brigade at the head of the Defence Department. Do what Bob Hawke did. Simply say, these people are part of our family. We put them on a plane tomorrow under the cover of night and they'll go to Dubai. Come on, Scott. You've got to be a better man than that. Take a break. Back after that.
Alan Jones, proudly brought to you by the Global Food Forum, committed to sustainable agriculture.